So you mean to tell me I have to pick a background? Oh, but I'll get a free proficiency or two and some extra equipment? What's the catch? Oh, yeah, you want me to pick a flaw. Welcome back, Maverick Gamers. We've arrived. We're now at a point where the basics of Dungeons & Dragons, and one of the core reasons why I started playing the game as a child, we've now ruleified it. Well, let me just be clear. We've actually created rules around the concept of something that was so ingrained in what D&D was all about that we actually have to tell the players they actually have to do it. What I'm talking about is the background system in Dungeons & Dragons, specifically the background system in 5e. Now, common sense was, when I was playing D&D in my younger years, when you hit the table with your paper, pencil, and dice, you started about scribbling down all the stuff, and there was some stuff that was rules, and some stuff that you just brought with you to the table, meaning your imagination, meaning a character concept, sort of an idea of what you wanted your alternate self to be like in this new fantasy world. Well, fast forward several decades now, and we now have a rule system called the background system that actually tells players that they need to choose a background in order to infuse the story with a little bit more narrative flair. Not only that, but you are getting benefits to choosing a background. This is a common sense thing that I thought Dungeons & Dragons was all about at its core, but now it seems like we actually have to tell the players, go ahead and actually attach a background to his or her character. My first piece of advice would be to take a step back from automation. D&D Beyond is a really great tool, but I think it puts the players in the mindset that they're actually creating more of a series of stats and numbers as opposed to creating an actual in-game avatar. Sit down with a piece of paper, pencil, brainstorm some ideas. Even if you're doing it online, talk to the player about his background first. Now, when I talk background, I'm not saying that they need to map out an entire life story filled with every little detail. Trust me, I've had some players go to that extent, and it robs the Dungeon Master of some of his creative ideas that he might want to bring to the story himself. Sit down with the player, tell them they need a name. They need a little bit of a background as far as where they've come from and why they're actually adventuring in this game. Keeping in mind, first level players don't have a lot of history behind them. It's really great just to sort of say, I've picked up a sword and I've decided to go adventuring to raise money for my family, or the general curiosity that I have. You don't need to fill in all the details about NPCs in your character's life, and also keep it short. Dungeon Masters also really like to add to the story of the players themselves. Just like in any good story or movie, there's always characters that surround the main character in the movie to sort of give them some context and frame the story as it were. Indiana Jones, Luke Skywalker, there's always people around them that sort of add to the story. This is a step that's missing in a lot of character creation processes, and I think it's worthwhile to mention to your players that in addition to creating their character, maybe they could just throw a name out there or throw a little story as to why your character knows somebody else. It's going to help them bind them to the world at large, and it's also going to help your Dungeon Master sort of get a creative burst and start telling some stories that are unique and tailored to you down the road. Now, I know this is going to sound funny, but where you come from says a lot about who you are, both in real life and in storytelling. Go ahead and open up the gazetteer of your Dungeon Master's game world. If it's a homebrew world, feel free to ask him whether or not you can create something new as to where your character comes from. If it's a pre-established world, like the Forgotten Realms, go ahead, open it up, and pick somewhere. Now, granted, pick somewhere that's relatively close to where your Dungeon Master's planned adventure is going to occur. I highly doubt that your character is actually going to be living in the same area and specifically the same place that your adventure is taking place in. But having a close proximity to the adventure gives you a reason to adventure out past your homeland. Talk to your Dungeon Master, see what he has for ideas as far as where you've been and where you've been traveling from. No matter how you decide to create your character's background, just remember it's a collaborative process. This is not a responsibility of the player himself, but work with your players to actually create something that fits within the lore of your game world and the adventures moving forward. Make sure you leave some wiggle room there to add some creative elements later on down the road without being bookended by a player's massive backstory and detailed history. Thanks for tuning in to this short little video on how to handle backgrounds in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Hope you're all having fun playing Dungeons & Dragons out there, and we'll talk to you soon. Before you go, I need your help. I'm trying to grow the exposure of what we do here at Maverick Games. My goal is to actually bring information to parents and students around the world in hopes that they can see gaming as a path forward for learning, academics, and even support of neurodivergency. Please subscribe, make sure you click on those notifications, and I hope that you'll find content here that will be helpful for you and maybe others. Thank you very much, and thanks for tuning in.